lengthwise, you now go widthwise, and a lot of the maps really weren't designed to be played in this fashion, so it does really change the map dynamics in a way that isn't always positive. On the whole, I found the vast majority of World of Tanks games were going to kills, not caps, simply because capturing the zone took too long and was too easily interrupted, whereas taking out the enemy was fairly easy, especially as the games did tend to snowball a bit as you started to get a pretty substantial advantage. War Thunder also has 3 common game modes, although they do function pretty differently than how they do in World of Tanks. You have a 1 cap, a 2 cap, and a 3 cap. The 1 cap and the 3 cap both essentially work on the same principle, wherein if you control more capture points than the enemy team, you will start bleeding away their tickets. Additionally, destroying enemy vehicles takes away 100 tickets as well. So a combination of capture points and destroying the enemies will result in the enemy slowly losing tickets until you ultimately win. And now is a good time to bring up the spawn system in War Thunder. When you drop into a match in War Thunder, you have 450 spawn points to spend on vehicles. Heavy tanks and tanks at the high end of the battle rating range you're playing cost more spawn points, whereas anti-airs, tank destroyers, and tanks at the lower end tend to cost less. As long as you have the spawn points, you can keep spawning in vehicles, although vehicles of the same type do start to get progressively more expensive the more time you spawn them. Spawning additional vehicles will consume spawn points, but doing useful actions such as destroying enemies, capturing points, getting assists, etc. will also give you spawn points. Because of this, while it is technically possible to run the enemy completely out of spawns to the point where you just win, it is actually fairly uncommon. Now you'll notice I haven't mentioned the 2 capture point yet, and that's because it works very differently from the other 2. In the 2 capture point setup, both teams start with control of their own point, and the enemy has to take control of it. And once the enemy takes control of it, they essentially automatically win, which of course makes this game mode feel very reminiscent of playing World of Tanks. Interestingly enough, in the last update they did add another caveat that you could use to win the game, that was by getting 60 enemy kills. However, even with this additional win condition, these maps still go to time far more often than the other 2. Whenever a map goes to time in War Thunder, whether it be 1, 2, or 3 cap, the winner is always the team with the most tickets left when the time runs out. The combination of these factors means it's fairly difficult to run the enemy team completely out of vehicles, so 9 times out of 10 games in War Thunder will go down to a combination of tickets from zone caps and kills, or in the case of the 2 cap map, will actually go down to whoever has the most tickets left remaining at the end of the timer. One could easily look at War Thunder's more sluggish and authentic features versus World of Tanks' more arcadey gameplay and think that World of Tanks is a very fast-paced game, whereas War Thunder is a much slower and more methodical game, in which case prepare to have your mind blown because it's actually kind of the other way around. I would broadly characterize World of Tanks as a methodical team-based game, somewhat in the veins of something like Overwatch or League of Legends. The objective is always to do what is best for your team in a given moment, whether it be holding a lane, scouting the enemy, or providing fire support to your teammates. And the big reason for this is the time to kill, or TTK. The TTK in World of Tanks, the time from which you land your first shot and do damage to the enemy to the time in which you destroy them in a one-on-one duel, is around 30 seconds to a minute, which makes it very impractical for you to try to take on enemies one-on-one, and much more practical to try and take out enemies or for them to take out you using team shots. Now, a long TTK in the game does 2 things. Number 1, it means that generally speaking in a one-on-one fight, the better player will come out on top. A long TTK favors prolonged accuracy and landing multiple shots over a period of time versus just getting lucky once. The downside to a long TTK is fairly straightforward. It's actually very difficult to take on multiple enemies at the same time. If you get caught in part of the map on your own and the enemies were to realize this and 2 of them were to push you at the same time, if they have double the hit points and double the damage per minute, you're probably going to lose that fight no matter how good you are, unless you have some kind of overwhelming advantage against them. This also combines with the spotting system, wherein many of the tanks that can do a lot of the frontline fighting aren't great at spotting enemies without getting seen themselves. And the tanks that are really good at spotting the enemy and not getting spotted are generally not that efficient in terms of dealing with the enemy. In this respect, the dynamic and individual elements of World of Tanks often boil down to trying to extend the vision of your team to enable your long-range shooters to land shots, or trying to use your heavy armor to push up to the next corner, or alternatively trying to set up your long-range gun in a better flanking position so you can shoot around the enemy's cover. It always happens in context of your team, it's never done in a vacuum. While the team-based element can feel amazing when it's working and everybody's firing on all cylinders, it can also be incredibly frustrating if you get stuck on a big long-range map and all of your light tanks are fighting to share that one single brain cell they got. War Thunder, on the other hand, is more of a dynamic and individual game along the lines of Call of Duty. And a lot of this feel comes from the very short TTK in War Thunder, wherein basically every tank in the game can be taken out with a single well-placed shot. This also means pulling off a successful flank will mean taking out enemies basically on reload, and you can roll up the entire flank on yourself if you're good enough and quick enough about it, as you can frequently take out multiple enemies before the second or third one even knows you're there. An obvious downside to a very fast TTK is that enemies can also kill you very fast if there's an enemy that you didn't see or that's hiding in a corner. However, to some extent this is
Missile 12 o'clock. Low.
And victory will be ours. Well done. Clear. 140. 200 meters. Keep it up and victory will be ours. Attention to the map! Attention to the designated grid zone! Let's keep the pressure on. Victory is close. Enemy forces have captured a zone. Target destroyed. Roger. Advancing. Target destroyed.
Armor piercing. Loaded.
We're ahead of the enemy.
Within hit.
Machine gun ready for action.
Within hit.
The running gear's out of order. Machine gun ready for action. Machine gun ready for action.
MG ready.
Machine gun ready for action.
MG ready.
Target destroyed.